This episode of the CyberWire is made possible in part by Devo. With the cyber threat landscape constantly expanding, security teams face ever-evolving challenges when it comes to protecting their organizations. That's why Devo's cloud-native logging and security analytics platform is built to help transform security operations for today and beyond. And it's why they're always looking to learn more about how they can support and deliver value to the cybersecurity community. Devo's CEO, Mark Van Zadelhoff, touches on this and more through candid conversations with cybersecurity leaders on his podcast, Cyber CEOs Decoded. Tune in for the inside scoop. Devo, more data, more clarity, more confidence. And we thank Devo for sponsoring our show. Extortion, both high-end and low-end. Vehicles from Honda may soon be rolling off the lot. Social media and open-source intelligence. Russian cyber attacks spread internationally. Joe Kerrigan surveys items for sale in dark web markets. Our guest is Jonathan Wilson from Authentics to discuss consumer sentiment around data privacy and preparing for cyber combat. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Tuesday, July 12th, 2022. Yesterday, we described a report by Resecurity that the BlackCat gang had adopted a quadruple extortion model. The four aspects of the extortion attack are encryption, the threat of doxing, distributed denial of service, and finally, reputational damage achieved by harassing the victim's customers, business partners, employees, and media to tell them the organization was hacked. BleepingComputer reports that one novel and upscale feature of this newer approach is provision of a searchable database of non-paying victims, the better to expose them to reputational damage. BlackCat may represent the high end of the ransomware as a service market, but that doesn't mean the low-rent simple minds are out of business. By no means. There are still plenty of simpler approaches to cybercrime that require far less talent and attention to detail. Researchers at Sygnia, for example, report on the activities of the Moth group, and these are so low-end that one hesitates to even call them ransomware because where's the where in all this? Moth uses commodity rats against its victims, and it does so opportunistically with little evidence that they're fishing for particular targets. It doesn't bother encrypting data and relies simply on the threat of doxing to extort payment. What's your secret, Moth? How do you do it? Volume. Researchers claim to have demonstrated a proof of concept they're calling Rolling-PWN that affects the remote keyless entry systems in Honda models between 2012 and 2022. They say the exploit takes advantage of the keyless entry system's rolling code system, which uses a synchronizing counter to prevent replay attacks. The rolling code system accepts a sliding window of codes to account for the key fob being pressed accidentally or when it's out of range of the vehicle. The researchers say, by sending the commands in a consecutive sequence to the Honda vehicles, it will be resynchronizing the counter. Once the counter is resynced, commands from the previous cycle of the counter worked again. Therefore, those commands can be used later to unlock the car at will. The researchers worked on Hondas, but they think it likely that other makes are also vulnerable. While there are some reports of others replicating these results, the exploit remains, to say the least, controversial. Honda, for one, doesn't believe it, according to BleepingComputer. Honda dismissed the proof of concept as old news. A Honda representative emailed Vice to say, "I'd hope that you would treat it as such and move on to something current rather than creating a new round of people thinking that this is a new thing. We've looked into past similar allegations and found them to lack substance. While we don't yet have enough information to determine if this report is credible, The key fobs in the referenced vehicles are equipped with rolling code technology that would not allow the vulnerability as represented in the report. In addition, the videos offered as evidence of the absence of rolling code do not include sufficient evidence to support the claims. So, it's a story worth watching, but so far the prudent verdict would seem to be not proved. In the meantime, push to start, but be safe out there. Turning to Russia's hybrid war against Ukraine, The Telegraph cites a blogger accompanying Russian forces in Ukraine in support of its conclusion that NATO-supplied HIMARS rocket artillery systems have been striking fear into Russian troops. On Monday, Roman Saponkov, a Russian military blogger embedded with frontline Russian forces, wrote on Telegram, "Yesterday I happened to witness a HIMARS strike on Chernobyevka in Kherson, practically in front of my eyes. I've been under fire many times, but I was struck by the fact that the whole packet, 5 or 6 rockets, landed practically on a penny. Usually, MLRS lands in a wide area, and at a maximum range it completely scatters like a fan. It makes an impression, I won't dispute that. It is clear that this is just the beginning. They're going to hammer Kherson and other border cities, Belgorod in particular. They will cover all the command posts and military installations they have gathered data on for the past 4 months." Mr. Saponkov sensibly advises his readers that a single wonder weapon is rarely a war winner. We mention this not so much as an observation on the kinetic phases of the war in Ukraine, as compelling and tragic as those may be, but because Mr. Saponkov's comments on the effects of HIMARS fire are a striking illustration of how hard it is to moderate communication via social media, even where there's a strong motivation to do so and a tradition of censorship to draw upon. Open-source intelligence has played a prominent role in the special military operation from the outset. On the eve of the invasion, for example, foreign observers had a tolerably complete and realistic picture of the Russian order of battle based on posts by Russian soldiers, and, for example, by curious Belarusian civilians posting photos of Russian combat vehicles staging through their towns, bumper numbers of the vehicles often clearly visible. This new OPSEC challenge is one all armies will henceforth face to one degree or another. Clearance Jobs quotes security experts on the challenge. Their comments don't neglect the effect too much information can have on service members' careers, but the broader OPSEC lessons are also clear. Dominic Eager, Field Chief Technical Officer at Azuna Security, said, "The advent of social media has created a whole other realm of oversharing, tracking, and personal opinion narrative." And he surely has a point. Killnet, the threat actor that represents itself a hacktivist tendency operating in the patriotic interest of Russia, but not under the control of Moscow's security services, has extended its distributed denial of service attacks to Polish government sites, the Express reports. As was the case with earlier operations against Lithuania, the most recent DDoS attacks didn't rise above the level of nuisance. Poland has strongly supported Ukraine, both since the invasion and during the tensions that preceded Russia's war. And finally, the hybrid war Russia initiated against Ukraine has prompted considerable reflection on how one raises and trains a cyber army, and even irregulars need training and direction. The record by Recorded Future describes the work of Nikita Nish, a former employee of Ukraine's security service and founder of the cybersecurity consultancy Hack Control, which has been providing Ukrainians with both advice on self-protection and tips on conducting offensive cyber operations against the Russian enemy. Mr. Nish sees this as a contribution to partisan war against the invader. He dismisses the concerns some have raised about the risks of encouraging hacktivism even in wartime. He says, "Not attacking your enemy in cyberspace is stupid. In the past, soldiers destroyed logistics and production facilities, but now they also attack technology and information. Taking down a network is becoming to 21st century guerrillas what blowing up a bridge was to their 20th century ancestors." And now, a word from our sponsor, Recorded Future. Staying one step ahead of the rapidly evolving threat landscape requires a constant flow of daily intelligence. To stay up to date on everything happening in the world of cybersecurity, join over 50,000 other security professionals who subscribe to the Cyber Daily. With daily email updates on the latest cybersecurity news, top threat actors, exploited vulnerabilities, suspicious IP addresses, and more, the Cyber Daily is the first thing security professionals check every morning. To learn more and subscribe for free, go to recordedfuture.com/cyber-daily. And we thank Recorded Future for sponsoring our show. Identity security firm Authentics recently shared study data on consumer sentiment around data privacy, looking at issues like preference for security over convenience, corporate responsibility, and trust. Jonathan Wilson is Chief Risk and Compliance Officer at Authentics.
For me, I think it was a lot of affirmation of, what I was, seeing in consumer behavior and what our customers were reporting to us. And, that's essentially today's data privacy world is a little bit like the Wild West. You read a lot of the terms and conditions we're agreeing to when we open accounts, and there's a lot of room for businesses to liberally collect data, and in many cases, companies are collecting troves of data, and they're doing that perhaps under money laundering and suspicious activity laws that permit them to do that, and in some cases, they're taking liberties that perhaps they're not allowed to take. But just the lack of consistent laws and legislation, across the globe, I think has created a bit of a Wild West. I noticed, coming out of the report that there is this theme of transparency that, I think is missing, that consumers, feel is missing. And I believe we've got a long way to go, to get this, the legal and legislative standard raised so that businesses become more transparent about what they are doing and how they're using personal data.
Is there a sense of resignation on behalf of the users, when faced with these, EULAs that are unreadable, too long to be able to digest, that they feel as though they're not really in control of things?
I think there definitely is that sentiment, Dave. They clearly, coming out of the survey that we did, there were a high proportion of the respondents who were feeling like they were a little bit out of control. But I think we are seeing the tide turn a little bit. We're seeing, what I'm seeing is consumers begin to take control again of their data. There are sites that are dedicated to helping consumers understand who has access to their data and to help automate requesting access to the data that's being held. And I think that the new laws that are emerging, in particular, if we look at the U.S. market, there's a handful of states that have data protection laws, but there's a handful of states coming out with data protection laws, and there's also a federal law that's being positioned at the moment. So I think a lot of that is coming from consumers that are, quite frankly, probably fed up with being in a place of not being in control, and they want to take back that control.
One of the things that I noticed in the report here is that it seems as though consumers are really looking to the businesses themselves to take responsibility for taking care of a lot of this data.
Yeah, very, very clearly they are. I think the consumers are putting the onus on care of the data back where it belongs, really, which is where it's being collected. It's at the business level and at the the commercial level, the service provider level. And so I think there is an expectation that consumers have that, kind of going back to what I had said a little bit earlier, that companies start to become transparent about what they're collecting, why they're collecting it, and what they intend to do with it.
Based on the information you've gathered here, what are your recommendations for organizations to align themselves with the desires of consumers?
My recommendations would be to understand the data protection laws that apply to them, but also not just apply to them, but also the data protection laws that that exist globally. There are some really good standards out there, such as GDPR, in Europe, and CCPA on the U.S. coast, and to examine them and understand the best practices within them to to effectively treat customers as they're demanding to be treated. I think also, Dave, we can help the situations, and organizations can help the situation by leveraging and deploying emerging technologies. So there are technologies available, such as, for example, verifiable credentials. And this type of technology puts the power and the sovereignty of the consumer's private information back into their control. It allows them to hold it, for example, on their mobile device, and to control when it's shared. So identify the relevant technology, assess it, apply it, and to be ready to deploy the emerging technologies, which are putting the power back into the hands of the consumers, which is really good business.
Are you optimistic that we're heading in the right direction here? Do you have a sense that we're gaining ground? I do think we're gaining ground. If I look at what's happening, in the U.S. market, I mean, it's clear, Dave, that the European market has a fairly robust set of requirements and legislation. But if we look in the U.S., we see the maturation of data protection laws, states that are going to be passing their own data protection laws, and we also see movement at the federal level. And I think that companies are starting to see that there's some teeth to these data protection laws. We're seeing fines being levied, and companies really have no choice to just sit up, take notice, and to take the data protection laws seriously. So I do think we're making progress. That's Jonathan Wilson from Authentics. And now, a word from our sponsors, KnowBe4. So, what's a con game? It's a fraud that works by getting the victim to misplace their confidence in the con artist. In the world of security, we call confidence tricks social engineering. And as our sponsors at KnowBe4 can tell you, human error is how most organizations get compromised. Where there's human contact, there can be con games. It's important to build the kind of security culture in which your employees are enabled to make smart security decisions. To do that, they need new school security awareness training. See how your security culture stacks up against KnowBe4's free phishing test. Get it at knowbe4.com/phishing test. That's knowbe4.com/phishing test. And we thank KnowBe4 for sponsoring our show. And joining me once again is Joe Kerrigan. He's from the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute, and also my co-host over on the Hacking Humans podcast. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Dave.
Interesting report came out recently. This is from the folks over at the Privacy Affairs website. This is written by Patricia Rufio, and it is the Dark Web Price Index for 2022. A lot of interesting data in here, Joe. I thought maybe we could unpack this together.
I love these kind of reports, Dave.
Yeah?
Because I've always wondered, what does my ID cost on the dark web? How much is my email account worth?
Yeah.
Not much, it turns out. Email database dumps, you can get 10 million email addresses for $120. Right? And that's for USA email addresses.
Okay.
Apparently, New Zealand email addresses are a little more pricey. For 600,000, it's $110.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more per email address. And Canadian email addresses are also more expensive than American email addresses.
Mm-hmm.
They have a bunch of different things in here about getting into hack services.
Right.
Dave, are you paying for Netflix every month like a chump? Because if you have $25, you can get a hacked Netflix account that already has a 1-year subscription.
I am paying for a lot of people in my family to watch Netflix, let me tell you.
Right.
Not all of them under the same roof.
Shh, Dave, don't say that. That's not true, of course.
No, I'm just planting a hypothetical out there.
Right, yes.
Yes.
Here's an interesting one. Hulu, they'll sell you a Hulu account for $5, but isn't that pretty close to what the price of a Hulu account is if you just get it?
Yeah, I think it depends. There are different tiers, I think.
Yeah, there's advertising tiers.
What's interesting to me in here are the wide variation of the value of different things.
Yes.
Some of these I didn't know or expect. Evidently, passports are quite pricey.
They're very pricey.
Yeah.
They're like $3,800 for a passport here.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually another thing. Later in the article, there's a list of price changes over time, and passports have come down significantly in cost. A lot of things have come down in cost. In fact, most of the items on this list, including social media accounts, followers, and all that stuff, has come down in price.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, passports are down in price about $200 from $4,000 to $3,800, and not a big drop in price, but they're still very pricey, $3,800. Other IDs have gone up in price. Things like a Louisiana driver's license or New Jersey driver's license. A fake green card is up $10. It's a European Union national ID averages around $160. That's up about $40 from last year. U.S. driver's license. I don't know what a U.S. driver's license is. I mean,
because a driver's license from someone in a U.S. state, I guess, as
well,
opposed to
but they
another
call
nation.
out different states here. They call out like a New Jersey driver's license, and they have Delaware ID, Indiana ID. I know that Maryland has IDs that are not driver's licenses that look essentially the same as a driver's license.
Right.
It just doesn't say driver's license, it says identification card.
Mm-hmm.
U.S. driver's licenses are up. A Lithuanian passport has gone up almost double. It was $1,500. Now it's $3,800 like all the other passports.
Right.
I find the social media section pretty interesting. You know, the most expensive hacked account is a Facebook account. $45 for a hacked Facebook account.
Okay.
It's only $40 for a hacked Instagram account. Twitter accounts are $25. They have a hacked Gmail account. I don't think that's a social media account, but it's here at $65. That makes sense to me. A hacked Gmail account is probably very valuable because that is the keys to the kingdom for that person, right? That will get you access to all of their accounts if that's their main account.
Right.
And you can look through to find out what kind of services they use and then get access to their services.
Yeah.
If you want to buy followers are cheap. Spotify followers are $1 for 1,000 of them. Instagram followers, $4 for 1,000. Same with Twitch. LinkedIn, if you want to get 1,000 people to follow your company, $10. Right? SoundCloud plays.
How much to stop having people follow me on LinkedIn?
They can't, I don't think they can do that.
Oh, man.
Yeah. SoundCloud plays, $1 for 1,000 of them. Now, that's not a follow. That's a one-time event. So that's probably why that's cheap, I guess.
Yeah. I guess part of what's interesting about this report is just the breadth of things that are out there. I tend to think about these things in broad categories, but when you see them laid out, the detail that they have here, there really is a market for everything.
Yep.
And it's interesting to me that they're able to get all these prices for these things. You know, just looking around on the forums, it's a market. It's a real market.
It is a market. They talk about that later in the article, and they talk about as the marketplace matures, prices decline. They say sales volume has gone up and prices have gone down. There's a lot more data out there, and one of the comments they make in this section is that there is a larger variety of options for people. They've noticed some important operational changes here. One, there was an organization that was a dark market called the White House Market, was the clear leader, but they shut that down in October of 2021, I think.
Yeah.
They comment that dark web security ops have gotten better. People have become more secure and efficient, but law enforcement security specialists have also become more skillful. Dark web operators, site operators, market operators, I should say, dark market operators use better security measures throughout their dark web transactions. They started using Monero instead of Bitcoin because of its inherent privacy preserving in every transaction.
Yeah.
And PGP is the way people communicate.
Okay, makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah, really interesting report here, and there's so much more detail than we have time to cover here. Again,
it's a lot of information.
Over on the Privacy Affairs website, and it's called Dark Web Price Index 2022. Worth checking out. Joe Kerrigan, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.
Thanks to all of our sponsors for making the CyberWire possible, especially our supporting sponsor, Tyke, the leading API and service management platform for managing API security. Sign up for a free trial at tyke.io/security. That's tyk.io/security. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. The CyberWire podcast is proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our amazing CyberWire team is Liz Irvin, Elliot Peltzman, Trey Hester, Brandon Karpf, Eliana White, Puru Prakash, Justin Sabi, Rachel Gelfand, Tim Nodar, Joe Kerrigan, Carol Terrio, Ben Yellen, Nick Valecki, Gina Johnson, Bennett Moe, Chris Russell, John Petrick, Jennifer Iben, Rick Howard, Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Hey everybody, Dave here. Are your sales and marketing teams tasked with ever-growing brand awareness and lead gen goals? The CyberWire is a great way to put your message into the ear of decision makers across cyber and help fill your funnel. We have great sponsorship opportunities available, but we're filling up fast. Contact our team now to learn more about how sponsorship of the CyberWire can help build your business at thecyberwire.com/sponsor.